What if one American city secretly solved problems others still face? Chicago looks normal at first, but hidden design choices make it fundamentally different from everywhere else. Here's why. At the turn of the 20th century, Chicago was not the organized, efficient city people see today. Chicago was overwhelmed. Population growth had exploded faster than anyone expected. In just a few decades, Chicago transformed from a small settlement into one of the largest cities in the United States. But that rapid growth came with consequences nobody had fully prepared for. The streets were crowded, housing was packed tightly together, infrastructure struggled to keep pace, movement across the city became slower and more frustrating with each passing year. Chicago faced the exact same early warning signs that later defined struggling cities across America. Congestion wasn't just an inconvenience, it was becoming a barrier to productivity. People spent more time navigating the city and less time living their lives. Pollution filled waterways. Neighborhoods developed without coordination. Nothing felt unified. It felt reactive. At that moment, Chicago could have easily followed the same path as countless other cities. It could have expanded outward without structure. It could have allowed private interests to shape the city without long-term planning. It could have sacrificed accessibility in favor of short-term growth. And if that had happened, Chicago would likely be just another city struggling with the same problems millions of people face every day. But instead of accepting that outcome, Chicago did something rare. Chicago made deliberate decisions that prioritized long-term function over short-term convenience. Those decisions didn't just fix immediate problems. Those decisions quietly reshaped Chicago's future for generations. And most people today don't even realize how unusual that is. Because what Chicago built wasn't just a city, Chicago built a system. One of the first things people notice about Chicago, even without realizing it, is how easy it is to understand. Chicago doesn't feel random. Chicago feels structured. That structure begins with something deceptively simple, the street grid. At the center of Chicago's entire navigation system lies one intersection. State Street and Madison Street form the origin point. From that single location, every address expands outward in clear, logical increments. Each block follows a consistent numbering pattern. Every 800 address numbers equals exactly 1 mile. That means someone standing at 1600 West knows immediately that location is 2 miles west of State Street. This may sound like a small detail, but it changes everything about how people experience the city. In many American cities, streets curve unpredictably, addresses jump inconsistently. Neighborhood layouts reflect decades of uncoordinated expansion. Navigation becomes confusing, especially for newcomers. People rely heavily on digital maps just to move through familiar areas. Chicago removes that uncertainty. Once someone understands Chicago's grid, the entire city becomes mentally accessible. Locations become predictable. Distances become intuitive. People don't feel disoriented. People feel oriented. This creates a subtle but powerful psychological effect. When environments are predictable, people feel more confident moving through them. Daily life becomes smoother, decisions become easier, movement becomes less stressful. This system didn't happen accidentally. After the Great Fire of 1871 destroyed large portions of Chicago, the city had a rare opportunity. Chicago could rebuild with intention. Instead of allowing chaotic development to continue, planners leaned heavily into order. Streets aligned, patterns formed, consistency became the foundation. That decision created a framework that still supports Chicago today. But streets alone don't make a city function. Movement requires more than just organization. Movement requires connectivity. And this is where Chicago made another decision that would change everything. In 1892, Chicago introduced something that would permanently alter how people move through the city. The elevated rail system, known simply as the Chicago L, began operation. At first, the system was limited. Few could have predicted how important it would eventually become. But unlike many cities that built transit reactively, Chicago expanded transit strategically. Over time, the Chicago L grew into one of the largest rapid transit systems in the United States. Today, it spans over 165 miles of track and serves more than 140 stations. Every day, hundreds of thousands of people rely on it. Every year, that number reaches into the hundreds of millions. What makes the Chicago L unique isn't just its scale, it's how the system integrates with the city itself. Many cities transitioned heavily toward underground subway systems. Subways offered advantages, including reduced surface noise and less visual obstruction. But subway construction came with major limitations. It was expensive, it was slow, it was technically complex. Chicago faced an additional obstacle. The ground beneath Chicago made underground expansion more difficult and costly. Instead of forcing underground construction everywhere, Chicago embraced elevated transit. This decision unlocked flexibility. Elevated tracks could expand faster. Elevated lines could reach neighborhoods more efficiently. Elevated structures could integrate directly with existing streets. But the most important innovation was the loop. The loop is a rectangular elevated track circling Chicago's central business district. This loop became the core of the entire transit network. Nearly every major line connects into it. This design allows people from across the city to reach downtown efficiently and transfer between lines easily. This connectivity changes how cities function. When people can move easily, economic activity spreads, job opportunities become accessible. Businesses attract customers. Neighborhoods remain integrated instead of isolated. Chicago didn't just build transit, Chicago built accessibility, and accessibility quietly improves daily life in ways people rarely notice consciously. If you're starting to see how hidden systems shape everyday life in cities, subscribe now. Understanding these patterns will completely change how you see cities forever. Because Chicago's success didn't come from one decision alone. Chicago's success came from layering multiple systems together, and the next system might be the most overlooked of all. Density shapes everything about urban life. Density determines whether businesses survive. Density determines whether transit functions efficiently. Density determines whether cities feel alive or empty. Many American cities struggle with extremes. Some areas concentrate too many people into limited space, overwhelming infrastructure. Other areas spread people so far apart that connectivity breaks down. Chicago found a balance that few cities achieved. Near downtown Chicago, density rises significantly. Tall buildings concentrate residents, workers, and businesses in close proximity. This concentration creates energy. It creates efficiency. It supports public transit and walkable streets. But as distance from downtown increases, density decreases gradually. Neighborhoods transition into mid-rise buildings, courtyard apartments, graystones, and smaller residential structures. These buildings still support community interaction while providing more personal space. This gradual transition prevents sudden isolation. Chicago avoids the extreme overcrowding of ultra-dense cities while also avoiding the disconnected sprawl of low-density cities. This layered density supports both efficiency and livability. People can choose environments that match their lifestyle while remaining connected to the larger system. This flexibility strengthens Chicago's stability, and stability leads to something many major cities struggle to maintain: affordability. Housing affordability has become one of the defining challenges of modern cities. As populations grow and demand increases, housing costs rise rapidly. Many cities struggle to maintain accessibility for middle-income residents. Chicago followed a different trajectory. Despite being one of the largest cities in the United States, Chicago's housing prices remain significantly lower than cities like New York. The median home price in Chicago remains far below cities with comparable economic importance. This outcome surprises many people, but Chicago's housing diversity plays a major role. Chicago contains a wide range of housing types: graystones, two-flats, courtyard apartments, multi-unit buildings. These structures increase housing supply without requiring massive skyscraper construction everywhere. This diversity creates flexibility in the housing market. More supply creates more options. More options stabilize prices. Chicago also avoided relying entirely on suburban expansion. Many cities expanded outward aggressively, creating long commutes and infrastructure strain. Chicago maintained stronger internal density, allowing housing to exist closer to economic centers. This proximity reduces pressure on housing markets. But Chicago's housing success wasn't luck. Chicago's housing success was the result of planning decisions made decades earlier, and no single plan shaped Chicago more than the one created in 1909. In 1909, architect Daniel Burnham introduced something revolutionary. Daniel Burnham presented the Plan of Chicago. This plan wasn't just about solving immediate problems. The plan of Chicago envisioned what Chicago could become decades into the future. Daniel Burnham believed cities should prioritize human experience, and Daniel Burnham proposed wide boulevards that improved movement. Daniel Burnham emphasized public parks that provided space and balance. Daniel Burnham insisted that Chicago's lakefront should remain open and accessible to everyone. This idea protected Chicago's shoreline permanently. Today, Chicago's lakefront stretches over 25 miles as public parkland. This space remains open, accessible, and integrated into daily life. This decision created a lasting impact. Instead of restricting access, Chicago preserved access. Instead of isolating natural space, Chicago integrated natural space. This enhances quality of life in ways difficult to measure, but easy to feel. People walk, people gather, people connect. These experiences create emotional attachment to the city, and emotional attachment strengthens communities. Daniel Burnham's plan didn't just shape Chicago physically. Daniel Burnham's plan shaped Chicago psychologically. Chicago became a city designed for people, not just for growth, not just for profit, but for function. Chicago's systems continue to influence everyday life more than most people realize. The grid still simplifies navigation. Transit still connects neighborhoods. Density still supports local businesses. Housing diversity still stabilizes accessibility. Public spaces still enhance quality of life. These systems interact constantly. Each system strengthens the others. Many cities struggle to adapt to modern challenges because foundational systems limit flexibility. Chicago's systems provide flexibility. Chicago didn't just solve problems temporarily. Chicago built systems capable of evolving. This is why Chicago still feels functional more than a century later. This is why Chicago still feels different. And this raises a question most people never consider. If Chicago proved intentional planning could shape a city for generations, why didn't more cities follow the same path? Why did so many cities allow chaos to shape their future instead of structure? And more importantly, can modern cities still learn from Chicago today? Because the answer to that question doesn't just affect Chicago. The answer affects the future of cities everywhere. Comment below. Does Chicago represent the model cities should follow, or is Chicago the exception that can never be repeated? And if you want to understand how other cities took completely different paths, watch the next video.